The next step should be to your liking, Chris. Esther.
Yes, sir?
Call the Pentagon. Tell General Scott I want to see him right away.
Yes, sir.
I think it's time we face the enemy, Mr. President.
He's not the enemy. Scott, the Joint Chiefs, even the very emotional, very illogical lunatic fringe, they're not the enemy. The enemy is an age. A nuclear age. It happens to have killed man's faith in his ability to influence what happens to him.
And out of this comes a sickness of frustration, a feeling of impotence, helplessness, weakness. And from this desperation, we look for a champion in red, white, and blue. Every now and then a man on a white horse rides by and we appoint him to be our personal god for the duration. For some men it was a Senator McCarthy. For others it was a General Walker. Now it's a General Scott.
I'm glad, sir, you decided to call off that fishing trip.
Don't bother about that. We don't need it tonight. We aren't going to have an alert tomorrow.
I beg your pardon, Mr. President. You wish the alert canceled?
I do. I intend to cancel it.
Well, may I ask why?
Certain facts have come to my attention lately. I won't waste time by detailing them all now. I'll simply say that I want your resignation tonight. And those of Generals Hardesty, Riley, and Diefenbach as well.
You're either joking, Mr. President, or you've taken leave of your senses. I know of no reason why I should remove my name from the active list voluntarily, or for that matter, any of the other Joint Chiefs.
You could give me the reasons, General. But if you want me to itemize them, I should be glad to do so.
Please do.
You have used, without my authority, substantial sums from the Joint Chiefs Contingency Fund to establish a base and to train a special unit of troops whose purpose and even whose existence was kept secret from me, from responsible officials of the Bureau of the Budget, and members of the Congress.
And the name of that unit?
You know the unit. Its designation is ECOMCON.
I'm afraid your memory fails you, Mr. President. You gave me verbal authorization for the base and the unit. As I recall it, we covered quite a few items that day. Perhaps you didn't pay much attention to this. I merely assumed you'd informed the director of the budget.
What was the date of that meeting, General?
I can't recall exactly, but it was right here in this office. Last fall, November, I believe.
You have a record of the date and subject?
Well, certainly, Mr. President. In my office. Well, if you care to make a point of it, I'll drive over to the Pentagon right now and get it.
That won't be necessary, General.
No, it won't be necessary. Colonel Murdoch, my aide, is outside. He sat in on the meeting. He will substantiate my memorandum as to the date and the discussion. I'll ask him in.
That won't be necessary either, General. You kept a member of the United States Senate forcibly detained at this base, and he will so testify.
And that would be?
That would be Senator Raymond Clark, the senior senator from Georgia.
I wasn't aware that Senator Clark had ever visited the base.
He will also testify as to the collusion between the commander of the base and one Senator Frederick Prentice of California, who with yourself and only a handful of others knew of the existence of the base.
Any other charges, Mr. President?
Would you like them in chronological order? The selection of a commanding officer for a secret base who was openly contemptuous of civilian authority and who has made some statements that come close to violations of the sedition laws.
Mr. President, I never discuss politics with my officers, but I do demand the highest confidence. And Colonel Broderick is an excellent officer with a fine combat record.
And an interesting travel record, you might add. What, for example, was he doing the other day on a motorboat, cruising around my island at Blue Lake, Maine? And don't tell me that's a figment of my imagination, because I've got him on film. Now, what about the kidnapping and detention of Colonel William Henderson at Dulles Airport early this morning?
I know about that case, Mr. President. Colonel Henderson struck an enlisted man and left his post. He's now being held for disciplinary action.
Incommunicado, you might add, so that he doesn't tell what he knows. Then there are the wagering activities of yours, General, particularly a betting pool on the Preakness.
Oh, come now, Mr. President.
Or perhaps more aptly classified, your personal and private code It covers your plan for the military overthrow of the United States government.
I presume, Mr. President, you're prepared to back up that charge?
I am prepared to brand you for what you are, General. A strutting egoist with a Napoleonic power complex and an out-and-out traitor. I know you think I'm a weak sister, General, but when it comes to my oath of office, defending the Constitution of the United States...
Somebody has to teach me how to salute a flag.
Somebody has to teach you about the democratic processes that flag represents.
But don't you presume to take on that job, Mr. President, because frankly, you're not qualified. Your course of action in the past year has bordered on criminal negligence. This treaty with the Russians is a violation of any concept of security. You're not a weak sister, Mr. President. You're a criminally weak sister. And if you want to talk about your oath of office, I'm here to tell you face to face, President Lyman, that you violated that oath when you stripped this country of its muscles, when you deliberately played upon the fear and fatigue of the people and told them they could remove that fear by the stroke of a pen. And then when this nation rejected you, lost its faith in you, and began militantly to oppose you, you violated that oath by simply not resigning from office and turning this country over to someone who could represent the people of the United States.
And that would be General James Mattoon Scott, wouldn't it? I don't know whether to laugh at that kind of megalomania or simply cry.
James Mattoon Scott, as you put it, hasn't the slightest interest in his own glorification. But he does have an abiding concern about the survival of this country.
Then, by God, run for office! You have such a fervent, passionate, evangelical affection for your country. Why in the name of God don't you have any faith in the system of government you're so hell-bent to protect? You say I've duped the people, General. I've built them. I've misled them. I've stripped them naked and made them defenseless. You accuse me of having lost their faith, and deliberately and criminally shut my ears to the national voice.
I do.
Well, where the hell have you heard that voice, General? In freight elevators? In dark alleys? In secret places in the dead of night? How did that voice seep into a locked room full of conspirators? That's not where you hear the voice of the people, General, not in this republic. You want to defend the United States of America, then defend it with the tools it supplies you with, its Constitution. You ask for a mandate, General, from a ballot box. You don't steal it after midnight, when the country has its back turned.
Are you serious, Mr. President? Are you honest to God serious? Well, I could walk out of here tonight and offer myself as candidate for the office of presidency. And by tomorrow morning, I'd be sitting at that desk with precisely the mandate you hold so dear. And what's more, Mr. President, you know it, and I know it, and this country knows it. So don't tell me I'd have seized an office tomorrow without the benefit of support. If you really had the guts to call for a show of hands, you'd be on an airplane right now back to Ohio.
You can ask for and get your show of hands, General. Just wait a year and 9 months for something called election.
A year and 9 months from now, I don't think there'll be an electorate, let alone an election. I think we'll be sitting on our own rubble. A minimum of 100 million dead. And on the gravestone we can carve, they died for Jordan Lyman's concept of peace.
General, did it ever occur to you that if you took over this government by force, you wouldn't have to wait a year and 9 months for the funeral? If the Soviet Union saw our government being taken over by a military dictatorship, how long do you suppose it would take them to break the treaty? Possibly even attack us? I think perhaps a question of days, perhaps hours, certainly weeks. I want your resignation, General. I want it tonight. I'm expecting it. Along with the other members of the Joint Chiefs who were involved in this treason. There's been abroad in this land in recent months a whisper that we have somehow lost our greatness, that we do not have the strength to win without war, the struggles for liberty throughout the world. This is slander, because our country is strong, strong enough to be a peacemaker. It is proud, proud enough to be patient. The whisperers and the detractors, the violent men are wrong. We will remain strong and proud, peaceful and patient. And we will see a day when on this earth, all men will walk out of the long tunnels of tyranny into the bright sunshine of freedom.